All right, let's just jump right into it. Today, we're diving into a beautifully dark, mythic explainer that hits on something we all struggle with: the blinding fire of unchecked ambition versus the cold, heavy weight of absolute exhaustion. You know the feeling, right? That overwhelming urge to either conquer the whole world by tomorrow morning or just crawl under the covers and hide from it forever. Well, as we're going to see, both of these extremes are incredibly dangerous to the human soul. We actually kick things off way up in the high hall of the Empyrean. Picture shifting mists of Niflheim pulling on the floor like spilled ink. It's here that this cosmic entity, the Shadow Walker, strikes a massive wager with the High Master over a mortal named Friedrich. The Shadow Walker points out a brutal track record. The scholar who sought the sun was incinerated, and the boy who sought the future was withered. See, he isn't just out to play a simple trick, he's literally exploiting the fundamental flaws in how we humans handle our own limits. So let's look at Friedrich's first big mistake, his dangerous pursuit of the infinite. At this point, he's a scholar who has completely exhausted all academic knowledge, and he turns to the searing, white-hot magic of the abyss. Why? Because he's incredibly thirsty for the infinite. It wasn't just mere curiosity. He was driven by this calculated, intense intellectual desperation. He felt like his mortal limitations were a literal cage, and he was frantic to break out of it, no matter the cost. He wanted absolute answers, and man, he wanted them right now.
This perfectly captures what we'd call macro-level ambition. Think about it. Friedrich didn't want the slow, tedious path of deep expertise. No way. He wanted the shortcut of the gods. He craved unearned power. And this is our first massive warning against unchecked ambition. When our drive to achieve gets completely detached from moral boundaries and discipline, we totally lose respect for the natural limits of our own competence. It's a recipe for disaster.
And the results of that hubris? It's immediate, and it is absolutely devastating. Friedrich goes all in. He literally summons a cosmic star shard and swallows it whole, thinking it'll give him infinite knowledge. But here's the catch. As a mortal, he just didn't have the physical or spiritual capacity to hold the infinite. So for a split second, he becomes the cartographer of the universe. He sees the birth of galaxies, the whole architecture of the soul, but the sheer unimaginable heat of that star incinerates the very vessel trying to read the map. His body violently crumbles into ash. Okay, so why exactly did this blow up in his face? Well, as his library literally caught fire from the heat inside him, the lesson became painfully clear. He completely forgot his limits. His own hubris blinded him to basic rational problem solving. He tried to kickstart this massive cosmic process, but lacked the physical vessel to actually survive it. In the end, he's only saved by the Master Sorcerer's stern mercy, who steps in and casts the star back into the sky. It's a harsh reminder that chasing your ultimate purpose is a serious double-edged sword if you don't have the discipline to handle the power you're summoning. And the Master Sorcerer drops a really profound truth here. He asks, what good is the map if the cartographer has burned away? It's such a billion points. Knowing how to initiate something huge is dangerously different from actually mastering it. It all comes back to this shared moral lesson of limits. The illusion of a shortcut, whether you're using ancient magic or, modern life hacks, always extracts a deadly price. You simply cannot bypass the necessary hard labor required to grow into a person who can actually wield that kind of power. Fast forward a bit, and let's check back in with Friedrich. We find him much older, profoundly tired, and sitting in a circle of salt and sulfur under a full moon. Years have passed. He's definitely not the reckless apprentice trying to swallow stars anymore. He's endured the long, slow labor of the soul, and right now he's performing a heavy alchemical ritual. He's bracing himself for a massive, terrifying fight with his literal shadows. He's fully expecting fire and chaos. But here's where it gets wild. Instead of attacking him with fire, the Shadow Walker just drips in like water in a lightless cave. He weaponizes Friedrich's weariness right against him. Appearing as this viscous, obsidian living ink, the entity doesn't offer infinite knowledge this time. No, he offers something much more tempting, the truth of Friedrich's own absolute exhaustion. He asks, why must the weight of the stone always be the weight of the self? Like, why does every single day have to be such a struggle? By giving him an out from all that intellectual desperation, the shadow isn't tempting him with forbidden magic. He's tempting him with absolute peace. Now, this is arguably the absolute hardest shadow to spot. Why? Because the dark entity isn't telling Friedrich to go commit some horrific act. He's just whispering, hey, stop striving, just be. And that right there is complacency. Especially when it's dressed up as peace, complacency is incredibly seductive. It literally convinces you that feeling exhausted means the journey itself was a mistake and that you should just throw your hands up and surrender. It's a profound warning against passively agreeing with your own weariness. Honestly, that can destroy your soul just as thoroughly as unchecked ambition can. And tragically, Friedrich caves. His hubris tricks him all over again, this time by making him believe that resting couldn't possibly be a trap. He leans right into the shadow's embrace. The living ink coats his skin, wrapping him in a shroud of absolute stillness. And then, he hardens. He becomes a literal statue, holding a quill that is never, ever going to move again. He wanted so badly to avoid the pain of striving that he forfeited his humanity entirely, just calcifying into cold, gray granite. So, when the moonlight finally fades, the master sorcerer arrives. And with his deep, hierarchical wisdom, he realizes Friedrich has completely inverted the lesson of limits. There's no burning library to save this time. Instead, he just finds a monument to stagnation. In trying to avoid the chaotic, fiery mistakes of his youth, Friedrich committed the ultimate sin of the soul. He chose a passive, absolute surrender over the active striving that actually makes us human. When you put these two extremes side by side, the whole picture just clicks into place. On the one hand, you have Friedrich's dangerous pursuit of the infinite, burning up with unchecked ambition. On the other hand, you have the older Friedrich's surrender to absolute exhaustion, literally turning him into stone. The shared moral lesson here is so powerful. Whenever we try to escape our mortal boundaries, whether we're taking the fiery shortcut of the gods or passively sinking into the void, it always leads to the complete destruction of the self. And you can see this mapped out in the source material's core philosophy, this architecture of mastery versus failure. Notice how shortcuts, whether they are fueled by that fiery hubris or that cold complacency, always lead straight to ruin, because they blind us to our own limits. The path of redemption, well, that requires the long, slow labor of the soul. It demands humility, discipline, and a genuine respect for hierarchical wisdom. It really shows us exactly why our souls desperately need boundaries and reverence, rather than extreme escapes. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The synthesis of this whole cosmic wager is continuous, active striving. This is exactly why the soul requires active labor instead of passive, absolute answers. Salvation isn't at the extremes. It's found right here in the messy middle. We have to engage in the hard labor to push toward higher purposes. Because without that active striving, without embracing the struggle while still respecting our limits, our soul just becomes a monument to its own exhaustion. I want to leave you with this provocative thought as you go about your week, navigating your own shadows and ambitions. Ask yourself, are you recklessly pursuing the infinite star, looking for a dangerous shortcut? Are you surrendering to the complacency of the stone, maybe mistaking giving up for finding peace? Or are you actually engaged in the challenging, continuous, active striving of the soul? The choice of which path to walk is and always will be yours.